Hello and welcome to the Heal Yourself with me, Sarah Dawkins podcast. We share people who've already healed themselves, along with health and wellness tips from myself. Hello and welcome to another episode of Heal Yourself. My guest today is Nicole Lee. And Nicole is trained in both modern and classical Qigong styles, has accreditation in meditation, mindfulness and energy healing, as well as craniosacral therapy. And on top of that, she has a bachelor's degree in complementary medicine. Nicole is passionate about making these ancient healing arts accessible for modern lifestyles and has repeatedly seen these gentle practices profoundly transform lives. Her own journey of self-healing and uncovering her true self began in 2013, leading to her to connect deeply with her own Tao of the heart. The journey has taught her that a wholehearted, fulfilled life is grounded in intentional living, a deep connection with nature, finding joy in life's simple pleasures and meaningful contribution. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much for inviting me to have a chat.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming to share your story to help other people to understand how they too can heal. So would you like to share with the audience what you've healed and how you've healed it?
Yeah, so I guess I would say what I'm healing, as in it's a work in progress, certainly. What I'm healing in myself is really emotional deregulation or dysfunction. And it's, I guess, habits that form from our formative years or our childhood and teen years that perhaps aren't very healthy or don't or aren't very self-loving, right? So I grew up in a household with lots of conflict and really not open communication and suppression of emotion. And there was a lot of emotions happening, but everyone, or when I say everyone, really my mum and dad, it was like they were keeping them, pushing them down, and really affected just the household, the energy of growing up in a place like that really affected me. It created, I don't know whether I'm just naturally very sensitive or whether growing up in that environment where I kind of felt like I was on eggshells caused me to be very sensitive. So in my earlier life, so in my 20s, let's say, that manifested, that environment and that dysfunction, that deregulation that I experienced all of the time in my emotions manifested as addiction. It manifested as kind of like over-functioning. I had an addiction at the same time was an over-functioning addict. So I was, from the outside looking in, you would never have thought, right, that I was like coping. I was using that as a coping mechanism for what was going on inside. Very, I guess, disconnected from myself. So fast forward into my 30s, and that's when I first was introduced, or Qigong was suggested to me. And I actually had no idea what it was when it was first suggested to me, but then I went and started doing some Googling and just started doing a few little practices. So there's lots of different parts of Qigong, but movement therapy is one of those, or mindful movement. You could even just think of it very basically as a mindful movement. And I found that really started to help me regulate myself and just calm my system. Like if I ever felt just a little bit overwhelmed or anxious, I was finding by just doing a little bit of these exercise therapy practices, it was really helping me to feel better within myself, feel more grounded and connected. And it's led, again, over the years, like over the past 13 or 14 years, it's just led into deeper and deeper understanding of myself. And that journey of, starting off with a few movements I really loved it. So I just kept sort of investigating all of the different aspects of this tradition and diving deeper and using different practices. And I was in love with these, this modality and how it made me feel. And I just think, oh gosh, more people would benefit so much from having a little some kind of little practice like this that they can use to soothe themselves, like the way that I have, and to more deeply understand who they are. Like when I first started this journey of healing my emotions or learning how to navigate my emotions and my nervous system, I didn't really even understand why I was like this. Like I hadn't even connected the dots. I knew I'd had kind of sort of this, I guess maybe you could say, emotional trauma in my childhood. I had health issues in my childhood as well, but I didn't really understand that living in that environment with conflict and suppression and being on eggshells all the time created like a hypervigilance in me. And even now, still, I'll notice at times, like I'll catch myself when this hypervigilance, this tendency kind of bubbles up. I'm kind of getting better at navigating it. And I've really found, and thank you for that beautiful introduction, but I've really found that the more that I adopt the slow living type of lifestyle, like part of the tradition of Qigong is exactly that. It's more presence in your life, living from a more grounded place with less rushing and hurrying. Like it's a big part of sort of the principles of the tradition. The more I've lived that way, or the more I do now live that way, the easier it is again to be very aware of when I'm becoming deregulated or dysregulated in my emotions and in my nervous system. I feel like I've said a lot there. How's that sounding? Are you following along with my story so far? Are you understanding where I'm coming from?
Totally. And I totally understand that. I've been there, I've felt it. I know it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So,
sorry, go on.
no, please. I was going to say, so please continue.
Well, I guess what I wanted to add, just to give a bit of more context, there's the movement therapy that I found in a physical sense to be very grounding and soothing for myself. But as I went deeper into some of these sort of, I call them like different streams of the tradition, I realized that there was a whole sort of, it's like a Taoist psychological stream, like understanding yourself from that lens of Taoism and the psychology of it all, which when I started to go into that, and we call it, like you mentioned it in my introduction, the Tao of the heart, right? Like the Tao means the way. So the way of the heart. Started to understand how as a I'm going to say soul, or as a spirit, we're this undifferentiated, like pure energy, right? And in our childhood and in our formative years, we build up these layers around ourselves that create, I guess, our personal reality or our identity. And when I started to read about, just how this is viewed through this lens, it made so much sense to me of how I've, my identity, or how I've created who I am in the world, and when I could understand that more deeply, I could see how, again, those experiences of suppression and just being in an environment where there was very limited communication. I think communication is so underrated, in a family and in couples. So I could really see how that had shaped me. And when I'm engaged to be married, and we're getting married in just 6 weeks' time, but my partner and I have been together for a few years, and that relationship with him has shown up other aspects that needed to be healed that come from childhood and from adolescence as well. Like, you know, the way that we have our attachments in intimate relationships. I can see how that same environment has influenced the way that I navigate my intimate relationships. So just the like getting the sort of psycho emotional viewpoint from the tradition of, you know, what it is that I've fallen in love with, so to speak, or what has become my passion, has really given me more kind of understanding of myself.
That's really fabulous, because a lot of us, I do believe, and myself included to a certain point, we kind of sail through life through our subconscious mind on autopilot. And we don't often become conscious. And the times we do become conscious are often triggers. We are triggered by something, someone, somewhere, some smells, and it takes us back to those childhood memories. And from what I know, we can often not remember those childhood memories, but we feel the feelings, the emotions that we had when whatever was happening to us, and that's what causes our triggers. So yeah, totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, and look, in my case, you know, my partner would do things from either just, you know, like he's living his day-to-day life, or maybe he's kind of acting out of maybe some of his own wounds, right? And that would trigger things, you know, that would take me right back to what it was like living in my childhood home. My mum has I guess you would say she has some mental health issues. So there was times when it was really challenging. So it's so interesting how my current relationship, intimate relationship, has brought more to the surface to be healed. And I keep going into the practices that have served me so well over all these years now. And but yeah, having the awareness and having the a level of consciousness, I think when you experience, like for me, a lot of, like I've already mentioned, hypervigilance. I mean, a blessing of that in a way is that you're actually very aware of what's going on in your environment, in your relationships, in your friendships, and you, like for me, being very sensitive as well, I can read the energy, I guess, of a situation or an exchange. So I feel like I went off on a little bit of a tangent then, but it's just interesting how I guess what I'm saying is there's gifts that can come from these wounds that we heal. Right?
Absolutely and totally. Yes. You know, we can look at them often as something negative. Oh, look, I've got this trauma. But actually, as you say, there are gifts within that. And I believe in a soul contract. So I do believe that we have to go through what we go through to become who we are, as a stepping stone to becoming who we will be in the future. And everything builds on everything else. And we have to go through that. We have lessons to learn in this life. That's my belief.
Absolutely. I agree completely. And I think if I didn't go through that in my childhood and adolescence, I would be a completely different person. And you know, even the experiences of my early 20s, like when I mentioned how I was really acting and behaving from my trauma and my wounds, right? But really, those experiences have now, in hindsight, have served me as well, right? And I think absolutely agree with you that it's kind of the journey of your soul, right? And it's the call of your evolution. You know, I think there can be sometimes people can over identify with what's happening for them in more of I guess, a victim mindset rather than a growth mindset. So I think one of the huge kind of transformations that have to happen on a mental and emotional level is being able to view what's happening as an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And thank you for sharing that. So could you talk us through what kind of Qigong exercises and energy you used in your healing?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. One of the things that I think I love about Qigong is that there's thousands, literally thousands of forms or practices. So for me, I'm the kind of person, like, I'm an Aries, and I think this is very much a trait of an Aries, that we get bored easily. Like, we're the kind of people, in a general sense, of course, that start lots of things but don't necessarily finish them. So with Qigong, there's, as I said, thousands of practices. So for me, it's like a playground, like, I'm not saying that I don't finish my Qigong. I've learned lots of different forms of Qigong over the years, but I think for me, it really keeps me stimulated, which is interesting in itself. Like, again, probably part of my personality that's developed through my experiences, the kind of need for a stimulation, right? But there's some really basic things that are kind of classified as, maybe you'd think of them as gentle stretches or acupressure practices, where you're tapping or stimulating the physical body. Some of them are quite physical. Some of them, I guess, when I say they're gentle stretches, I guess it's all relative to your level of fitness and mobility. But one of the great things about Qigong that I found is it's very adaptable. So you can kind of, if you need to be sitting down, or if you need to be, I don't know, maybe doing shorter practices, that's really accessible in that way. But there's other things as well. So there's the physical movement aspect, but there's things that we call, what I usually call Shen Gong, which is more kind of a blend between a movement practice and a meditation practice. I just did a little one before this chat with you, actually. So for people, like for me, and I'm guessing for people, again, that like to be a little bit stimulated by their practice, that like to have a very strong anchor, rather than having stillness, you'll be doing a seated practice where you're moving in a seated position, and at the same time you're practicing presence. So that most of the forms, most of the practices and the movements, they're kind of grounded in presence, in deliberate, precise movements. So all very intricate and detailed, but very present. Just like you would in a meditation, if your mind goes off somewhere and starts thinking about, and what's for dinner for tonight or whatever, then you just guide yourself back into the moment. You get really good at catching yourself out and coming back into the moment. So there's lots of different practices. Some are more modern and contemporary, and some are very traditional. I did go to China and study with a master there and learn some very, what I call classical form of Qigong, which is so slow and precise and very intricate. It takes a long time to learn, so it's not necessarily perhaps so great for maybe modern culture. I mean, I guess you could adapt it a bit, but I think for, the general public, we're needing and with lifestyles the way that they are, everyone's so busy and has so many commitments these days. I think short, accessible practices are probably the types of ones I'd suggest people seek out.
Wonderful. And in our pre-chat, you did say about 2 different practices that you've got. So would you like to share those with the audience?
Yeah. So just 2 that I use lots, right? But 2 that are really easy to do. One of them you can do without anyone like knowing that you're doing it, really. And it's called, I mean, it has a couple of names. It's called, I'm going to call it full torso breathing. So when you're breathing, usually, I mean, your body's just doing it, right? But to do this technique, you kind of have to manipulate your breathing a little and become more aware of your particularly your inhalation. And I don't know if you know what a bellows is. It's kind of a very old thing to reference, but they used to use them in fires, right? They used to kind of pump them. So the idea is that your torso becomes a bellows and you feel below your navel, and you can even have your hand there or not. You can just feel there with your awareness. And you draw your inhalation down below your navel to begin with. But then you really want to, like a bellows, fill up your entire torso. And the more that you can focus your attention on certain areas, so after the below the navel, I would say focus on your waist and imagine you've got a belt around your waist. And you don't need to put your hands there or anything, but feel that area. See if you can get a sense of expanding from the inside as the breath comes in. And then draw it right up into what we call the central palace, which is below the heart. And then draw it up behind your heart and up into the chest and up into the shoulders and the very upper part of your back. So you're really doing it so slowly. You're breathing in so very slowly, and you're trying to feel the sensation of almost like a stretch that's happening on the inside of your body. Is that making sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm doing it as you're talking through it.
It's really regulating. It's so very regulating. So your inhalation is very long and slow, and you're focusing on all those areas, and then you're just going to slowly exhale. And look, you might just do 2 or 3 breaths like that, depending on your situation, your circumstances, right? You might just do 2 or 3 and you might go, okay, I really feel better now. Or depending, if you're really dysregulated, you might need to do it for a little while, right? But the other one that I really like is, we just call it a chi massage. And you can use it, again, if you're feeling maybe overstimulated, but at the same time, you could use it if you're feeling like a bit flat as well. It's kind of like it's can be used at both ends of the spectrum. It's simply tapping your body with your fingertips. So those people watching the video now will be able to see me demonstrating, but literally with my fingertips, I've just started tapping my chest, right? But what you're going to do with chi massage is you're literally going to tap every centimeter of your body, right? And you're just going to breathe. You don't necessarily have to do that full torso breathing. Maybe you'll just take some what we call cleansing breaths. So you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth like you're having a sigh. And you'll just tap down your arms all the way to your fingers, back up your arms. You'll tap all over your torso. You can tap your scalp, tap your face, tap your lower back, go down the outside of your legs and back up, like you're trying to touch every centimeter of your body. And again, you could do that in a couple of minutes, or you could invest maybe 10 minutes into doing that, right? And just repeating it. And you will feel an incredible difference in your body. You will feel an incredible difference in a physical sense, but also emotionally and most likely mentally as well.
That sounds so easy to do. Maybe not in public.
Well, I guess with the breathing, you can do that without anyone knowing you're doing it. But
Yeah.
you know, the other thing that, through this healing process, and it's ongoing, as I said at the beginning, I've just come to a place in myself. I guess when I was growing up and I was in that environment of walking on eggshells, of conflict, of emotional suppression, of no communication. I'm sure there's like probably every second person has had some type of experience like this. Maybe not their entire childhood, but maybe different relationships, right? But when I was in that situation, I just needed ways to reconnect and regulate myself. So what I was going to say is it's got to the point now I wouldn't care if I was in public. I would just do it. I've become so, I guess I've healed a part of me that values, now I value me and my own peace and the way that I feel over what someone who's watching me might be thinking about me. So, I mean, what a gift.
Isn't it just when we can let go of what we think people think of us, to be
Well,
free to be ourselves?
you've probably heard this. You've probably heard this before. No one's actually looking.
Yes,
Like, as in
absolutely.
no one's actually really caring about what you're doing. Like so
Because they're
so
wrapped up in themselves.
exactly, right? So
Yeah.
I would say, you know what? You want to bust out a chi massage in the park or wherever. Like I remember when I first started doing this type of practice, like when I was first discovering it, I was quite self-conscious about, maybe being in the park or being somewhere where people would see me. And like I said, now I'm just at the point where I'm like, I actually do not care.
Yeah, and
And
I think a lot of that is that fear of being seen. If you unseen, unheard, unvalidated child, then the fear of being seen by doing something strange in air quotes, like not the norm, because most people wouldn't think to do a chi massage in public. Most people don't even know about it. But when you can get to that point of expressing yourself in public and not even thinking about what other people might think, you've totally freed yourself.
yeah, and look, the other thing that I wanted to mention, and just, I guess, validation for all of the other people out there that they're on a spiral. Like I describe myself as being on a spiral of healing, right? Like there's there there's been a time in this last 12 or 13 years where I kind of felt like, oh yeah, I've done a lot of healing. I've resolved a lot of that baggage from the past and the result of all of that. But I've learned that it kind of just keeps coming around again in different ways. And I think there's, like sometimes we want it to be done. Like we kind of live in this achievement culture, right? Like we have to finish or we have to complete something, or we think something like, oh, I've done so much work on this already. Whereas I think it's okay to just be where you are and let it come round again. And you're going to just do another layer of your own healing. So, it's funny how life just keeps showing you more opportunities to heal.
So true. So very true. And like you say, in different situations. But I think every time something comes round, the more healing we've done, the easier it is for us to see it, and be less in the victim mode, because it's so easy to sit in the victim mode. And I know I've been there and I've sat in it for years, blaming my parents for who I was.
Mm.
And as we start healing, we understand that actually, what did they go through to make them act like that and behave like that? And when we can see that bigger picture and step outside and look at it as an observer, it helps us to be compassionate with ourselves and with other people too.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think that saying, hurt people hurt. It's so true, right? And when sometimes I've found it hard to talk about my childhood, right? Because I love my mum and dad. like, and I know that they were honestly doing the best that they could. And I look at my mum now and I just think, oh God, my heart, like I can see how my mum is still navigating all of what I've been healing. She has experienced, is still experiencing herself, so you just become more compassionate, not, towards your parents, or more compassionate towards everyone, I think, in a way, when you go through your own process of healing and you become more aware.
And that's the key, isn't it? Awareness.
Mm.
Because until we become aware, we can't change anything, because we're still running in that subconscious autopilot.
Mm.
But when we start to become aware, we can start asking questions. Well, where has this come from? Why are we acting like this? How can I change myself? What can I do? And that awareness raises questions.
Absolutely. And I think, for me, the Taoist lens has been like kind of just the thing that's really resonated with me. But I guess it doesn't, like, it certainly doesn't have to be Qigong or the Taoist lens. You can, there's going to be a multitude of ways to view your life and lenses to view your experience through, right? So it's really about finding something that resonates with the individual. And that, I think, finding something that, like, you feel really excited about, like that was why it ended up being Qigong for me. Like, when I discovered Qigong, I just really loved it. So I was kind of wanting it, right? I think if you're trying to do your own healing or work on your healing, there's no point adopting, I don't know, some kind of technique or um, dogma or whatever that's kind of doesn't feel good to you. Like, if you're told you should do it this way and it's not feeling resonant, then it's probably not going to be that beneficial to you. But you're so right in, yeah, you have to have developed the awareness of what's going on in yourself. And then you have to be, willing to show up and be radically self-responsible, you know, and realize that you're creating your life, and all of, like, any symptoms you're experiencing, they're all just labels for imbalance, right? So digging into what your body's trying to tell you, like, and being open to, like, a Taoist practice or something that's a bit alternative or just different, being open to using different ways to interpret what your body's telling you, I think, is going to be really helpful, rather than actually, and it's actually, I've just reminded myself about an article that I read today about a gentleman who was in the field of science and research, and he became very unwell. I can't remember what his label that was given to him was, but he somehow found Qigong, and he realized he had to completely change his perception of the world, because he started doing Qigong and he experienced all of these amazing benefits, like, in terms of the symptoms he was experiencing. But he was really he was really aligned with this sort of view of science and research, and Qigong just does not fit into that kind of paradigm at all. So if you're going to be really rigid in your thinking and not open to different kind of ideas and modalities and practices, and maybe things that are a bit kind of like odd, then you're probably doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah. And it is a radical mindset shift when we start healing, because we start to look at the world totally differently.
Yeah, how interesting is it, though, to look at your symptoms as just information. Like your body's just trying to tell you about where it needs some attention of some kind, rather than those labels, from kind of mainstream medicine. They're all so dire, all of the diagnosis and, the like suppression, the symptoms, we just push them all in a lot of the time through mainstream medicine, or we cut them off, right? So if we start thinking how our body is actually our greatest friend and home, and it's just trying to tell us something, and it's our it's our task to kind of be a detective in a way, and figure ourselves out, and whether that's a physical issue or in my case like mental and emotional kind of influences, it doesn't really matter what it is.
No, and spiritual issues as well, reconnecting back inside of us with that little voice that often we've silenced over the years.
One of the things that really resonates with me also, I just want to mention about Qigong, and this has been something that I've noticed. So recently, I started doing some CrossFit, right? Which is really the complete opposite of Qigong in so many ways. But I wanted to do some physical exercise like resistance training and weight kind of base training to help strengthen my physical body, right? So I thought I'll do this for a while. But what I really realized through this experience is how in modern exercise, spirit is missing from the approach of whatever it is. Like, you go to the gym, it's just all body, maybe a little bit of mind, right? In like the CrossFit, I must say, like, I think there's value in these things. I'm not saying there's no value, but in CrossFit, it's kind of the same, and it's like all body, a little bit of mind. And then there's this strange kind of idea of pushing yourself ridiculously hard, which like it was just strange to me. And then there's no spirit in any of that. So I feel like health and well-being and healing come from bringing together body, mind, and spirit, which is the three principles of Qigong, right? So I think, again, one of the reasons I'm so resonant with these practices is because of this kind of holistic approach.
Yeah, and healing has to be holistic, doesn't it? Because we are a body of intricate systems that are all interconnected and intertwined. So to make a change in any one system, we've got to look at ourselves as a whole. We can't just pull out that one system and go, I'm just going to heal this, which is what Western medicine's gone to now, rather than we need to take a step back and as you say, and I totally align with that, we have to look at the body, mind, and the spirit all together. We can't just pull out one. And I think that is important in when we're doing exercise, like you say, the Qigong helps with the spiritual aspect, but it's also working with your body as well, whereas the CrossFit is just really working with your body, but you've got to have that balance.
Yeah, and the other thing, that's probably not understood or little known in this tradition that, that I'm passionate about, mind doesn't mean intellect. Mind means heart. Like mind means more your intuitive knowing, which is it's not up here. It's this field here. And I think, we're so easy, we've become as a population and our modern culture, we just kind of do what we're told, not like tuning into ourselves. So part of my healing has been exactly that. Like trusting myself, knowing myself, investing in myself, listening to my body, but also listening to my mind, and I mean the heart, right? As my guidance. And even the other day, actually, I went to a class of CrossFit. I'm still participating, right? But the trainer like sort of said to me, "Oh, Nicole, you can go heavier than that in terms of the weights for the workout." And I said, "Not today." No, because my heart, I just knew for me, for that workout, what I needed. And I trust myself, not be told from someone else what to do. So I think that's a huge part of uncovering your true self. And when you're on the healing journey, it's learning to be primarily guided by that.
And become authentic. Be who you are rather than who people think you are, because everybody sees us through their life's experiences, through the lenses that they're using from what they've been through. So yeah, come back into yourself, absolutely, and listen to your body, because it knows what it wants. It knows what's best for you. Yes, people can push us, and sometimes we can benefit from that. But actually, it's about understanding what it is that we want and why we're doing what we're doing, what we want to get from it.
Yeah. I think, that it just all comes down to knowing yourself, doesn't it?
It does. It
And
does.
I guess I think that when you invest yourself into healing, and whether it's healing from a physical condition or a mental and emotional health issue, it doesn't matter what it is, but the journey of it uncovers more of yourself. Like, I don't think you can go through a healing. I'm sure you would agree in your own journey, right? You can't go through a healing journey and not understand more deeply who you are. I don't think it's possible.
Totally. And I think as we heal, we learn and grow and evolve. So we're actually changing ourselves all the time. So our awareness of ourselves is changing as we change, and we become more aware of who we're becoming as we're doing the healing and stepping out of who we were into becoming somebody different. But we're building on who we were, because that person's always going to be there. We're just building on it and growing and evolving.
Yeah, and I think, just going back to, you mentioned triggers earlier. I guess when we sort of maybe go around a few of those spirals of the journey, the triggers aren't necessarily the same anymore. And things can happen to us, circumstances can arise, and you can look at yourself and go, "Oh, wow, I remember when that would really throw me for six." And you just, again, it's having that awareness of where you're at and who you are, and the journey of it all. But yeah, it's so worthwhile. But I guess it can be really hard to enter into a path like this, where you have to take radical self-responsibility, and it's not, you can't hand over your healing to any other practitioner or doctor or anything. You've got to really become your own healer.
Yeah, and seeing a practitioner, coach, therapist can help support you, but ultimately we heal ourselves. Nobody heals us for us. We do it ourselves, but it
That's
is easier with a bit of support.
Oh, totally. I'm not saying don't get support. Absolutely have to have support, and you can get that in multitude of ways, right? But it's interesting because I had a client, a new client contact me recently, because part of qigong is kind of what we call external qi healing. So you could liken it to maybe sort of a little bit like Reiki in some ways, or pranic healing or something like that, right? It's where you have a practitioner who is assisting your energy system, and there's various ways that can happen, right? And so this person, they were kind of telling me about their things that they're wanting to heal. And, I sort of said to them, okay, well, I can do a healing for you, this one of these chi healings, but really the healing's going to be up to you. And this is kind of the areas that you might want to investigate for yourself in terms of what's going on in your life in these areas, because I sort of see some correlations, right? Like, and how the healing could happen for you, but it's going to be up to you to do that. I can support you, but I'm not healing you. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely, that message is really important, because a lot of people think we heal them. They think the doctors heal them. They think the hospitals heal them. But actually, they're just interventions. And we help support people on their own journeys.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nicole. And I know you shared a lot, but is there one tip you could share with somebody today going through some emotional problems that would help them on their own journey?
Gosh, the one tip. I think the one tip is you have to own your own stuff, right? Like, it's not like in my case, it's not my fault that I experienced all of what I did in my childhood, but it's kind of like you just have to, I own that that's how it was and that's what happened. So now it's my job to do the healing. So it's kind of like owning your circumstances and your situation and realizing that you're the one that's powerful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And where can people find you?
Well, I have a YouTube channel, so if you wanted to practice a little bit of Qigong, you could just head over there, Nicole Qigong. And of course, I have a website, right? So I'm not here to sell anything, right? So if you're interested in Qigong, try it out on YouTube. If you want to get deeper into it, head over to nicoleleeqigong.com.au. And it's just served me so much and does every day. So that's the only reason I'm doing the work that I do, is because it's been so transformational for me personally.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Nicole.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast with anyone who you think will benefit. And can you leave me a review wherever you've listened to it to help me reach more people? Thank you.